I just want to start by sharing a quote from educator, Brazilian teacher Paulo Freire, who said, quote, "Before learners attempt to learn how to read and write words, they need to first read and write the world." I was first introduced to this quote when I was studying to become a teacher, and it's come up in lots of different ways over the last however many years. Most recently yesterday, when all of you were lined up outside of my classroom door in your gowns and caps, practicing for tonight, and I heard no fewer than half a dozen different variations of, "Why are we wearing these?" It's a good question. One I didn't have an answer to, one that is a great example of what it looks like to read the world as well. Adults have a bad habit when they don't know the answer to a question to usually shrug it off with something like, "'cause it's tradition," or "because that's just the way it is," or even worse, "because I said so." And I didn't want to do that, so I did a little bit of research instead. I found out that our earliest universities in America are older than America and modeled after English colleges. We had a bit of imposter syndrome early in our career as a country. And the cap and gown were one of the traditions that we held over from some of those universities in Europe. At King's College in New York City, these caps and gowns were a very big deal. I came across a quote from, it was called the Book of Misdemeanors. And it described a student who, quote, "stole 8 sheets of paper and a penknife. His punishment? He was forbidden from wearing his gown for 1 full week." They wore them every day. It was their uniform. That was in 1774, and a few years later there were bigger fish to fry, and King's College was suspended for a little while. It later reopened and was renamed as Columbia, which still exists today in New York City. This new identity we had as a country led some colleges to reconsider their cap and gown culture. And over time, eventually it shook out where we decided that we were just going to wear these things during ceremonies. So much like tie-dye, low-rise jeans, and democracy, these things go in and out of fashion. But if we're really going to try to explain why we're wearing these things, we'll have to go even further back, 1,000 years, 11th century, the oldest English-speaking universities. At the time, the church was the dominant force in culture, and it shaped the way that people behaved and influenced and dressed. And if you close your eyes for a second, imagine sort of the most cliched, stereotypical image of a monk that you can, you'll see some similarities in their dress to the way that you are dressed tonight. That's because these long flowing robes of these men, and yes, men, at the time, were practical. Castles are cold, I guess. And if you think of the other thing you might know about monks, they're bald. That explains the cap. They had to keep their heads cold, or warm rather, in the cold. So I guess if I'm to answer that question, why are we wearing these stupid caps and gowns? Technically the answer is, well, we wear them because they helped keep the bodies and heads of monks warm 1,000 years ago. But I guess that when we think about the fact that we wear them on some of the hottest days of the year, one time, it makes even less sense. So why should you know that? I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't. But one of the things is that I came across was that some historians have pointed to the ways that these caps and gowns help us categorize each other. And if you look at your sleeves for a moment, and then if you look at my sleeves, I got better sleeves than you. And there's a reason for that. When it comes to educational dress, longer sleeves equals more education. And since I've had more education than you, they give me these longer sleeves. Some people have even said that it was on purpose to give a really handy visual for, hey, I can't do work in these sleeves. Just to show people that you didn't have to do physical labor. It's embedded in hierarchy. It's embedded in class. It's embedded in power. And I learned all these things, and I still didn't have an answer to the question, why are we wearing these gowns? And I'll conclude with this final quote, same author, Paulo Freire, who said, quote, "Looking at the past must only be a means of understanding who you are so that you can more wisely build the future." And graduates, that's your task. Not to just answer, why are we wearing these gowns, but to use those answers to help you build a better future. The rest of us have a role too. We need to step aside, and we need to let you do the work, because you can, and you will, and it's important that you do. You all have the skills, knowledge, and motivation and ideals to help us realize something better, a future where individuals can recognize their power, their agency, their influence, and their ability to create something better to transform the world. Now, I'm not saying this that we should hashtag cancel cap and gown. Not a bad idea. But instead, I would encourage you to take a look at those assumptions, take a look at those possible mistakes of the past, examine those traditions and those things that we still do that serve only the powerful and reinforce the status quo. And that's where the work is. And your generation is going to do it. It's on you to embark on this journey of adulthood with your critical consciousness intact, working to better read the world around you and develop in yourself all the tools that will help all of us in this room and all of us to come after you the ability to more wisely build the future. And in that, for all of our sakes, I wish you the best of luck, class of 2021.